Good morning, Pascal.
Good morning, Jérémie.
So we've been very busy these past few weeks. That's why there was a bit of a delay between the last episode and this one. What have you been up to?
So I'm getting ready for a conference. I'm a guest speaker for a conference on linguistic organized by a university in France, the University of Pau, where I'm joining some professor of linguistic, where they're going to talk about how the language is connecting with the culture, how the language is connecting with the experience of people. And they were very interesting to be able to see what AI can do, what AI can say. And because they have read one of the articles I wrote when I quote your favorite philosopher, Wittgenstein, when he explained
Hmm.
that the limit of my language or the limit of my world, they were very curious to see how I was using this philosophy to talk about AI. So I'm going to join remotely from New York the conference to present, and I will also be part of a panel of conversation with all these professors. And I'm very honored and humble to join this great people to share with them a bit our intuition, our experience, and our knowledge that we have developed the last couple of years. But
Congratulations.
I heard that you are very busy too, Jeremy, right?
I'm always busy. I had the pleasure of helping another ISP, International School of Paris, with they had a whole day of professional development and some sessions on AI, and I helped their teachers facilitate sessions on the use of AI for teaching and learning. That
Yeah,
was a great experience.
that's great. That's great.
So
Bien.
today, yes, today, uh, you are taking the lead. You are presenting something that you're using at your school. Um, Let me ask you this: what was the problem, and what were you trying to create?
Mhm. And so today I'm going to take one specific example, the work that we have accomplished with the admission team. And the problem was a problem that I had in other area of operating the school, my division. And it really starts with two things. Are we using a system that supports our process? Are we using a system that allow us to keep track of what we need to do? And are we using a system that allow us to have a very good quality data that we can utilize in order to be able to make some decision? And in admission, and the collaboration that I have as a junior school principal with the admission team, there is a lot of decision that we need to be able to make. And so 2 years ago, because I was facing this problem for a couple of years, I decided to be able to find a solution here. The problem was we were using probably like 15 different spreadsheets in all the process of um, uh, admitting the students, evaluating the students, enrolling the students, being able to capture information about the language selection, so which language the student will learn, being able to take some information for the student who we need to receive some support in ELL or learning support. There is many different people who are working through this process with many different files. The class placement, for example, each team having their own spreadsheet, etc. The result of that is everybody was typing some data. So, for example, the name of the student were not necessarily always the same. There was some spelling mistake. There is
Hmm.
not necessarily a way to be able to identify a student. So, when you were asking a parent what language your child will learn, French or Spanish, for example, the director of the Department of Language needed to go through his own spreadsheet to be able to match the students with the form that was filled by the parents. So there is so much time that we were losing through this process, and there is so much mistake that we were facing because as soon as you multiply the source of data, you are facing some corruption in the data. Very big mistake in the data.
So if I understand correctly, it was about admissions, and you had a lot of data, but it was hard to have a holistic view because that data was stored in many different places for different people. Is that correct?
It was difficult to have a holistic view, and in some ways where we were in the process after of placing the student in the class, we were not necessarily knowledgeable enough, or at least the people who were making the decision of placing a student in the class were not necessarily knowledgeable enough to make the best placement for the student, which is a problem that many schools are facing. So how do we keep track of this data in a way that make everyone more efficient and more knowledgeable in the decision they need to take? That was really the problem, and that's what I believe we have solved. And again, it's a work in process.
So how did you manage to centralize the data so it's easily accessible for everybody?
So the first thing is not about technology. I'm sitting with the person in the admission with who I'm working very closely to be able to understand what is the way that she's working, she's processing, and what is the way that we can in which way we can optimize this process. So really to try to think overall, what is the journey that the student is going to take from the moment they apply on the website, and we are using Ravenna like many other schools, this application that allow the parents to apply to many different schools at the same time. From the moment the parents apply to the moment that the student is placed in a classroom, what is the process that we want to be able to follow? Who are the different stakeholders? So a lot of work that we've done initially on that and try to streamline this process, try to optimize this process. That was really the first big step here. And then after that is to utilize the technology in order to be able to create the system that will support this process, which is really everything that we have talked about, Jeremy. For that, I'm using a few systems, Airtable, which is like a very smart spreadsheet. It's a database that is very efficient database. I'm using Software, which is an application that creates an interface for the data, so we can visualize the data. We can do like a web app. It looks like a nice fancy website. And then I'm using also behind the scene automation, Make. And this automation is another way, so we will see through this presentation, a way that we can be much more efficient in the work we are doing. And I will show you one or two examples of how we can create automation behind the scene also. So let's jump in.
Yeah, can we see?
Absolutely. Voilà. So now you can see my screen here. This is the starting point of all the application that we have developed, the customization that we have developed for my division here. So that's our portal here. And so here I am logging as my colleague with who I'm working very closely in the admission department. And so let's go here. Voila. And I'm going to go in the admission hub. So the first thing that you're going to see in the admission hub, and things that I'm going to present, Jeremy, some application for admission might be able to do it. Okay. The big difference is what I'm going to show you is exactly what we want to do. For example, many schools are using Ravenna, but Ravenna does not support a workflow, does not support team to be able to make to really follow the journey of a student, as I say, from the moment I apply, the moment I'm enrolled in the classroom. So Ravenna can do some very fancy thing, but it's limited to what people who have designed Ravenna can do. So what I'm going to show you here, it's exactly what my colleague in the admission team wanted to be able to see. For example, the first thing that you see here, there is different colors. Why? Because my colleague told me, you know what? I would like to have the comprehensive applicant review overview, the student assessment management, and the upload of the documentation about the student to be on the first line. Okay, I can do that. And the way that each module here that you can see is designed, it's exactly designed as what she wants. In this process for the last 2 years, many times, again, yesterday I was doing some update. She's telling me, oh, you know what? It would be great if we can do that. Or it would be nice if I can have this value here. Can we add this feature here? I really need to be able to collect this data here. How can? That's all the questions she asked me. And what I do is I develop it based on what she needs, always keeping in mind also that there will be other users, and always keeping in mind how those changes that we can do does not affect other changes that we might have done before. So there is some reflection that we need to have here when we update, but it's really a live application. If we want to do that with Ravenna or with any other application that supports admission process, it takes months, years, or you just don't see it happening, because the people who develop this application develop it for many other schools. So they need to make sure that if they develop one thing for one person, it will work for everybody else too. So let's see what it looks like here.
There is usually a cost to when you ask for customized
Oh,
feature, you might have to pay like additional fees.
no, absolutely. Our school management system, for example, if you want to update the template for the report cards, it can cost like maybe $10,000. Here, it can take me 5 minutes, and it costs nothing more than the application that we already subscribed to. And it costs a bit of time to do it, but it saves so much time after. So let's see an example here. I have created a student applying in 26, 27. It's my daughter name. It's not my daughter picture, but it's mostly look like her. And so this student here, what we can do is we can add a student. So this we can do it when we have suddenly a student who apply, enroll outside of the timeline for applying. But I have, of course, a way to export the data from Ravenna where the parents apply in Airtable, and it takes me basically like 10 seconds to import like 150 applicants, for example. So that's a very easy process to add them. So this one I did manually, and we can see here. When I click on this student here, there is 3 things we can see. We can see a dashboard here to be able to take some decision. And the way we work by wave. My colleague was calling it a wave. So wave 1 is the first decision that we can take. And I can see here, for example, if I click here, I can update the decision. Voila. We have the wave 2 is when we see some student a second time, for example. And there is other thing we can do. We can sometimes change a grade. So the student apply in J4, but it's going to be J3, for example. We can do that here. And below here, it's all the information that the admission and my team wanted to be able to have access to, and very specific to us. For example, here you can see there is a little green flag here. It's for the students who are born between September and December. We need to be able to identify them because of our policy in admission. We have a very specific policy for September to December. So this here gives us an indication if this is a student that we need to keep a specific focus on because of the birth date and because of the change in our policy. We can see some important information. If, for example, there are UN family because the United Nations International School, we can see some information about the language. Here would have been filled by the parents. We can see some information here where I randomly click. It's the information we want to be able to keep track on our student. But again, we could decide that we have 5, 6, 7 more data that we want to be able to collect on the student. We can see, and we can, of course, edit the student. We can upload file. And this has been designed exactly as what the admission team wanted to be able to do. So again, a lot of knowledge that we have about our student, much more that we can collect with the system that we are using to collect the application.
So where does all the information come from that is going to populate all of this?
So that's a very good point. A lot of data is coming directly from Ravenna. So when the parents apply, they put the date of birth, they put some information about the previous school, they put, of course, the name, first name, preferred name, they choose the grade to apply to. So there is all this data. Then the admission team in Ravenna is adding if it's a UN family or if it's a sibling, etc. A couple of data that we can have in Ravenna. When they're done, then I export all this, and then we can add all the other data, all the decision that we can make about the student, all the data about the language, all the comments. So we have different fields for comment. We have the assessment note, for example, the general comment from the assessment, internal assessment. We have a private note that is just for the leadership and the admission team. We have a share note for the teachers. When they do the class placement, they can see the share note, which is mostly the internal assessment note plus some edit that we can do here. And so all this, voilà, we have some ELL information that is going to come in from the ELL teachers. We're going to assess the student. They're all from different places. But once we get the original data from Ravenna, then after everything is inside Airtable until the student is placed in the class. And from there, these data become the student data that he keep when he's enrolled through the years with us, and we can continue to edit it as an internal, as a returning student. So I can show you also the assessment hub, and that's the new thing that I've designed this year. The admission team was always using a Google form, and I'm sure you can imagine, like, if we use a Google form for a teacher who are assessing a student, so they have a form, they type the name of the student, and they check some box, they put some comments, and they submit the form. That's what we were doing for a couple of years. And I'm sure you can imagine, Jeremy, what is the problem with that, right?
Right. Well, there's it's not very efficient, but also you might make mistakes when you type the name and then you have different records that don't match with the same student because you didn't capitalize it the right way or there's a typo somewhere, right?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's one of the big problem we had. And we have also we have 120 nationalities in our school. We have some naming convention for the families that can be a bit different. That, for example, what I know as a French person, there is some country, for example, where the student will have two different names, and so based on the choice of the parents when they enroll or when they fill the form, when the we may have different data here. So it was very important to the assessor doesn't type any name. The assessor has an assessment in front of them where the data is already collected from the admission team. So that's the first thing. The second thing also is the problem with the Google form is it was another spreadsheet. And so what the admission team was doing was printing as a PDF the Google form, opening each Google form, saving it as a PDF, and importing it in the database as a file, which means that this data, we were not able to play with this data. We're not able to filter this data. We're not able to create some group based on the data. For example, let's see all the students for who we have checked that the student might need learning support. So we can have at a specific time a look at all the students and focus on that, for example. Let's see all the students who may require ELL. All this was in a PDF, so was not searchable, we were not able to manipulate this data. So what we've done here
Could they have downloaded as created a spreadsheet from the form responses?
so we were able also to use the spreadsheet in some ways, but again, the spreadsheet was outside the data of the student. So in order to match it with the student, it was not going to be easy. It's like one by one, you would have to copy the data and put it in Airtable next to the student's profile. So here, the idea here is what we're doing here is let's create an assessment that is already attached to the student. So if I look at the student, I will see the assessment. There is no need to try to again transfer the data, copy and paste the data, search the data. There is an assessment. The assessment is attached to the student automatically, and we have also a specific. So we can add assessor because she wanted to be able to add assessor. So here, for example, I'm going to create an assessment for Leila. So I'm going to go here, and Leila is a student who apply as it's a J4 assessment that I need to create. So I can see all the different assessments. They're all different. And I'm going to decide that, for example, Leila will be assessed tomorrow. The assessor.
Be nice. I mean, she's your daughter.
Yeah, it's going to be very biased, right? Voila. And here I can add also a small comment for the assessor, like an important information to keep a specific focus because the student, for example, has a specific accommodation, for example, or anything that we want the assessor to be able to be aware. Now I'm going to create the assessment. And so the assessment is created for Leila here. Okay? And so what happened is, another thing also is, we don't want to give access to all these data to the assessor. We have some assessors that are not necessarily UNIS employees that work for us, specifically for some teachers that work for us over the years just for assessing our students. We have also some UNIS employees who do the assessment. So we have very, very different profile. So here, what we have here, we have the assessor doesn't have a login, can put the email address, and you get a link to be able to see the assessment. So again, here, I'm going to see like myself if I will be an assessor, and I'm going to go here, and now I can see the assessment for Leila. And I can go here, I can edit the assessment, so I can add anything. So there is some recommendation for the assessor here, for example, some information, and they do all this. And when they're done, they can say that the assessment is done. And once the assessment is done, the admission team can see all the assessment that has been done and can review those assessments. One important data that we wanted to be able to keep track is the child readiness. That to give us idea that from some student where there is not really a lot of question that we need to have when we go through the process of admission, they have an application that shows us that they're going to be successful for us without really any doubt, so we can go fast on this one. So the readiness helps. And for those who will have a readiness a bit lower, because we are a school that want to be inclusive, we want to make sure that the student can be successful with us. So we're going to keep a bit more focus on the student, go a bit more deeper in the assessment, and want to make sure that the support that we can offer will allow the student to be successful. So that was very important for us to have this feature here, which is a feature that appears at the top for the admission team, for example. So voilà. So, and once it's done, when I click done, and the assessment has been reviewed, the assessment is not accessible anymore for the assessor. So they can still edit the assessment as long as they're not been marked as done and reviewed. So behind the scene, there is a bit of automation. So are you interested to see a bit of automation behind the scenes, Jérémie?
I was going to say, actually, knowing you, there has to be making some automation somewhere behind that.
Yeah. So already here, in some ways, we can say there is a bit of automation, because when a teacher is going to assess a student and save it, automatically the admission team or myself, we can see something. So there is something that the teacher doesn't need to inform us, send us an email, oh, by the way, I'm done with Leila. This is a bit automatic, but it's a very simple first layer of automation in some ways. There is deeper automation behind the scene here. So here is what it's make.com. So it might look a bit complicated here. What you need to see is every line that you see here, it's an automation. And so that means the automation is that there is something that I could do myself manually, going in the system and just do it myself. But because it's repetitive and it can be created as an algorithm in some ways, as an entry point, an output, we can design it in what I use here, make.com. So it's what we call a scenario. And I can show you an example here, very simple scenario. Let's look at this one, for example, here. So this one is very simple, is once the teacher who have assessed, I click that the assessment is completed and the admission team has reviewed the assessment. At that moment, what we want to be able to capture, we want to take the general command from the assessor and copy it in the student profile in a specific cell that is very visible to us. When we look at a student profile, we can see the different commands for a student. And I think if I show you here, for example, here, yeah, it's on another page than here, but that's okay. Or maybe is it here? Yeah, no, I don't have it here. It's okay. But we have a specific place on the one of the module where we can see all the commands generated for a specific student. The general command is very important to us. So what happened is when it's completed and reviewed, automatically the data is going to, Airtable is going to get the record from the assessment, is going to search in the student database the same student that has been assessed, and is going to copy, and we can see it here, and is going to copy in our database, here. Voilà, here you can see it's going to copy the name of the assessor. Is going to copy the date of the assessment, because it's important, the date, for example, for a pre-K student when they assess in November and we look at the application, for example, in February or March, we know that there is some time that has gone through for this student that we want to take in consideration, and we see the general observation. So we don't need what we are doing in the past. We are copying the general comment and pasting it in Airtable. Now this is done automatically. Another type of automation that we have here is, for example, here, when we decide that a family, when it's time for a family to inform us about the language selection, we automatically send an email to this family. So we don't write the email, automatically generate an email with a link to a form for the parents to choose the language and add a picture of the student. So when we do the class placement, we already have pictures of our new student, for example. And so it looks like that, for example, the email here. This is a automatically generate email that can take some information about the student. And here, there is a link here. When we click on the link, and this is the link that I will receive as a parent for Leila, I can put the picture, I can select the language, and I can say here, for example, that I believe my child need ELL. And this is a unique form for the parents. They don't need to put the name. For example, here, as you can see, applying grade, student name, I cannot change that. The link I receive is the link for my specific child. And so again, that allows us to keep a very good data is when the parent choose a language, it's automatically attached this to the student. And so this email is automatically generated. If the parents, they don't reply to this email, they receive 1 week later a reminder. So it's not exactly the same email, it's a reminder. And every week until they fill out the form.
So, so Pascal, you presented a whole process that has been designed to be customized to your context and exactly what your team wanted. That is very data based and that centralizes all that data. But you said by saying like in the end, the goal is to admit the students who are a good fit for the school, right, and place them in a class. So what does that look like in the end?
So and that's I think for me that's the biggest transformation, because the first thing that I share with you in some ways is how we can be more efficient, we can work faster, and we can make less mistake. And this is very precious because you want to be able to do that, and there is less stress about the mistake you can do or the time that you consume. Uh, but the most transformative part is then how this data that we collect, that is now accessible, how this can inform the best decision. And this is for me the place where we have the highest impact, the highest transformation in the way that we're placing our student in the class. So the first thing here I'm going to share with you. So this is what I'm going to share with you, some dummy data that I just created, but it looks probably like our data and the data that we'll have any other school. So if we look at here, we have an interface here where I'm looking at, for example, some applicants that will have applied in 24-25. And we can see, for example, the numbers of applicants. We can see the numbers of students that will have been enrolled. We can see if we're matching our goal, for example. If we wanted to go to 100 enrollment students, we have 100. So this data is alive. So anything that we're doing in the wave one, in the wave two, any contract that would have been signed and we update the data with a new contract that has been signed, this data is going to be alive. Here we can see, for example, the numbers of applicants, and we can clearly see that the big entry point for the school is going to be our kindergarten, for example. And then after, we can collect some data about specific student profile. And so we can see here the numbers of students, for example, who have a ILP, for example, or intervention learning plan, etc. So a lot of data that we can collect for our decision process with the admission team. We can keep track of how many students are still in the process on wave one or wave two. Have we closed all the applicants, etc., etc., etc. That's the first layer here. The decision we made as an admission team, keeping track of the data, looking at the profile, looking if we're matching our goal in real time. And we have that on the big screen in my office, and we can see that in real time. When we make a decision, automatically the data is updated. And then come after the teachers. So what we have done in the past with a teacher is that we were giving them on a spreadsheet the name of the new student, and on a spreadsheet the name of the returning student. And they were taking the spreadsheet and they were just modifying the spreadsheets as they wished, entering data, etc., etc. And then we were collecting all the spreadsheet to create the class list. And that was not the best way to do it. We were not necessarily having all the information about the student, either returning student or new student. And there is some mistake that were, of course, made, like I think any other school will be able to relate to that. So now what I'm going to show you here, it's what we have, what we are able to do. So here, for example, for the teachers first, we have a dashboard that share with them also all the information. So here again, it's some dummy data that I put here for us to be able to see. So we see some information about the numbers of returning students, the numbers of new students. When we place the students when we do the class placement directly in Airtable, directly in our data, it informs directly each homeroom. So we can see each homeroom, how they're organized as we place the student. So we can see if we have a good balance in terms of anything. And if we don't have a balance, we are able to explain why. For example, we made some choice to bring the students who are in ELL. When we have less than 5 students, we want to put the 5 students together because that still allow them to have a lot of interaction with some non-ELL students, but that allow them also to share an experience together. So we made some choice, and the data here allow us to see the choice that we made. So we can collect some data, for example, about the learner profile of the student. So if they're high achiever, if they need some learning support, if they need some social element support. And again, all these, as we place the student, we can see live how those classes are organized and are balanced. And so can rebalance those classes based on that. Here is, for example, some information about the ELS student. Here's some information about the choice of language. And so same thing here, we can make the choice. We're going to have the student to take Spanish mother tongue as a Spanish mother tongue language in 2 different homerooms, but not in 4 or 5 different homerooms, for example. So this, again, allow us to see the data and make decision and see based on the class placement how it looks like. And the last one is a nice little feature we've done. We started, I think, 2 years ago, where the teachers, they were receiving all this data, they have access to all this data, where there is no mistake in the data because it was only one source of information, so that was great. But one team really enjoyed to use some small card with the name of the student to be able to create those class lists. And so what I thought, how do I bring this like physical process with the quality of the data that we capture and is accessible for the teachers. And so I've designed a system that all the team are using now, and the result has been quite striking. So here's, for example, here, for a new student, a card. So it looks like a card of this size. And we print all these cards, we cut all those cards, so we end up having like 420, 450 cards. And those cards look quite alike for a returning student and new student. There is more information for returning students because we have the command from each teacher, for example, that they have on the student. And so we have all those cards, and the teachers are able to do this physical process, but having at all time all the information they need. And if they need a bit more, they have on the database and on the dashboard all this. So they do the card, they give it back to the counselor, and the counselor enter it in the class placement in our table, and the teachers can see exactly what it looks like going back to the dashboard before. The way we do it also, I can give you an example, is based on all the data we have, the counselor kind of organize those cards as a proposal, which allow the team to go so much faster in organizing the class because they're more knowledgeable. They have access to all the information they need. They have a first draft that take in consideration all this information. And we have seen really an improvement in terms of timing, but also in terms of discussion we have at the beginning of the school year on some student that could have been placed a bit better. We always have that. We always have, because some new student that we start to know a bit better, we feel, oh, the dynamic would have been better otherwise. But those type of conversation are so much less than what we had a couple of years ago, for sure, because we are just more knowledgeable. In August, the teacher, when they have their class, or the teacher in the following grade, they have access also to all this data to be able to know their student a bit better too. Voilà.
So Pascal, we're actually beyond time, but
Yeah, I know.
knowing you, this can be a static solution. You actually explained how it has evolved a bit over time. What's next? What do you envision might be the next step for this whole application and process?
So there is two elements. First, there is the natural evolution of the system based on the feedback that user can share with me. And so we have different teams. The admission team has worked extremely closely with me to be able to really design it as they wish. But the other team, ELL, learning support, MLD department, we have a new director of MLD, for example. So there will be some evolution on this part based on what they feel will work better for them. So normal evaluation of the system. The other piece here is when we talk a lot about artificial intelligence, is how artificial intelligence could help us with this. And there is one way that the artificial intelligence can help us here is there is a lot of data and information about the student. And when we see, like, for example, how you want to have the classroom balance, for example, we could have, with all the new students here, the artificial intelligence being able to look at the data, again, anonymized, because we don't need to give to the artificial intelligence, for example, the name, the identity of the student, but to be able to look at this data and kind of like organize also those students to try to have a balanced group. So to help us, not to make the decision for us, but to have already some student that can be a bit like organized like that. The other element we can have is today what we have in the automation, we look at the general command from the teacher who have assessed the new student, and we automatically copy it to the student profile as a highlight. Now, what we could have, which is something that I've done in other systems, though it works pretty well, is not only to copy and paste these general comments, but to be able to look at all the rest of the data from the assessment and summarize this assessment, highlighting some element of the assessment that we want to add also to the student general profile for a quick access. And so this will be very easy to design in the backend. And so when we open the general profile, we can click on the assessment and see everything, but we can have also a summarize of it, like what we have in Themis, for example, the Themis summarize. We could have that also with this assessment platform.
Nice. Can't wait to see that. That will be next year. That's your goal to have that ready by next year.
Yeah. I think, and it's probably for everything I show you is probably the easiest thing to design. There is other things that I've shown you here that take more time, like the card, for example, takes some time to design the card, etc. This one is pretty fast. Voilà, Jérémy.
So next week, I'm thinking we might want to focus on something else that is keeping me, and I'm sure you and all school administrators, very busy right now, which is recruitment, and how we can try and leverage technology and AI to make it more efficient, more reliable, and more equitable as well.
Perfect, Jérémy. So thanks for leading this conversation today, Jérémy. I was very happy to share a bit more in depth with you
Thank
this
you.
work we've done.
Thank you for sharing this process that you've designed to make admissions, as you showed, not just more efficient, but in the end, more effective in helping place students where they should be to have the best possible learning experience at your school.
Thank you, Jérémy. À bientôt.
Salut Pascal.